Welcome back to Weekend Agenda. Well, Parliament resumes tomorrow with the government determined to put pressure on Labor over the question of legislating to ban people on Manus Island or Nauru ever getting a visa to visit Australia. At the same time, pressure is mounting on Malcolm Turnbull to decide whether or not he should agree to amend the Racial Discrimination Act to take out the words insult and offend. Comes in the wake of a federal court decision over some students at QUT where the federal court ruled on Friday, after 3 years of the charges being laid, that they had not offended the Racial Discrimination Act. To discuss that and other matters, I spoke a short while ago to Liberal Senator from Western Australia, Linda Reynolds, just before she got on a plane from Perth to Canberra. Linda Reynolds, good to be talking to you again. Let's go to 18C first of all. Yesterday, yet another branch of the Liberal Party, Tasmania in this instance, supported unanimously a motion to remove insult and offend from the reasons for prosecution under the Racial Discrimination Act. Do you think that Malcolm Turnbull's slowly getting the message that the party does want him to move on this despite his reservations?
Well, first of all, good afternoon, Jim, and it is lovely to be back with you. And I applaud and are very much grateful and very happy for the decision of the Federal Court yesterday to throw out that QUT 18C case. But the broader issues now for us all are, how did it ever get to that point? It's shameful that it did get to that point. And I think there are much broader issues to be discussed now. So I have been calling for changes to Section 18C very publicly now for nearly 2 years. And for me, it is an issue of free speech. And in this country, to preserve free speech, we've actually got to be able to have a discussion about it without the politically correct left bludgeoning us, with a cudgel of 18C to prevent us having a free speech here. So I applaud it, I welcome the decision, and I welcome the motion by my Tasmanian colleagues. And the Prime Minister is acutely aware of this issue, but again, it is one of many big issues that he's currently dealing with.
Yes, I've got to say, as a journalist, I'm very uncomfortable with restrictions on free speech. Equally, I'm very uncomfortable with racial vilification too, and it's a very difficult issue to thread your way through. On that QUT case, doesn't it suggest that given those remarks were found by the judge not to insult or offend, that it's really the operation of the Racial Discrimination Act and the behaviour of the Human Rights Commission, as far as that's concerned, that is the difficulty? And what really need to be removed is the opportunity for vexatious litigation rather than the wording of the Act itself?
Yes. Jim, that's a very good point, and I think it is one of the many points we now need to discuss. I'm on the Legal and Constitutional Committee that recently asked some pretty tough questions of Gillian Triggs, and as you know, she was highly evasive, unwilling to answer a lot of the questions, and in fact she misled us. So we will be recalling Gillian Triggs to answer more questions in relation to this, and now of course the issue of 18C. The barrister for some of the QUT students has also very publicly made a number of very serious allegations about the Human Rights Commission. So we've got a long way to go on this issue, and I think it is all Australians will be better for us having this debate publicly.
And when will you get the next opportunity to question Human Rights Commissioner Gillian Triggs, and what is it you want to find out?
Well, there's a lot of issues that we raised with her that she was unwilling to answer. I mean, she wouldn't even confirm quotes we read out from interviews that she'd done, either whether she'd done the interview, or even whether it actually reflected her point of view at all. So there's a number of issues in relation to that, but clearly we now need to also examine how it possibly got to this point with that QUT case and a number of other matters that have been before the Human Rights Commission. So there's a whole lot of issues here. If the Prime Minister does decide to ask for an inquiry, by the Senate or by a joint committee, I think that would be a very good thing for this nation. Let's have a free debate and discussion about freedom of speech.
Now, I don't want to prejudice justice or anything like that, but it would seem to me that the decision in the QUT case is very good news for Bill Leak from the Australian newspaper, because it would seem, on the face of it, that similarly he has not insulted or offended either. And given the other cause célèbre was the Andrew Bolt case, which was on another element of it entirely, it would seem, my reading of it, is that again, it's the operation of the law rather than the wording of the Act that is the problem.
Well, that is a very good point, Jim, and I think as we go through whatever lots of inquiries, either with Gillian Triggs and the Commission or something more widely, that is something that we have to have a look at. But in relation to Bill Leak, I was utterly appalled at the Human Rights Committee activity in relation to this, because the same people that were calling for Bill Leak to come up before the Human Rights Commission on this issue were the same people who were, je suis Charlie, but they certainly weren't je suis, Leak. And what I was wondering was, if they had Bill Leak before the Commission on that cartoon, were they going to call the West Australian Police Commissioner, who publicly came out and endorsed what Bill Leak had said and said, well, he's only telling the truth, because that is the situation my officers face daily here in Western Australia. So it was so appalling on so many levels, and we've got a lot to discuss here in Australia on this.
I wonder if I could turn to another issue. The announcement last week by the Prime Minister of plans to legislate for a lifetime ban on people on Manus and Nauru ever visiting Australia. Why is this necessary when successive governments have made it entirely clear that these people would never set foot on the Australian mainland?
Well, Jim, there is, with people smuggling and people smugglers, there is no easy options. There are no easy solutions. There's only the best of the worst solutions that government have to take. And I listened very carefully to the Federal Police Commissioner and also the Head of Border Command at the last estimates, and they made it very clear that there are still thousands of people located to our north who are still trying and still paying people smugglers to get here to Australia. So I think, unfortunately, it is a very important signal that we send out, and not to give these people false hope that if they just wait it out, or if they do finally get here, that they will get to Australia. They will not get to Australia, and I think it is a very important message to send out. So for me, not giving them false hope is actually the more compassionate course of action. But also, people keep forgetting, if you give people false hope, they'll pay the people smugglers, they'll get on those boats, and more people will start dying and drowning the most horrific deaths. So it is complicated, and it's not an easy decision, but it is an important one, I think.
Now, I do know for a fact that there have been very serious negotiations going on between the Australian and US governments over the possibility of the United States taking some of the refugees off Nauru, if not on Manus as well. But I wonder this, like John Key, the New Zealand Prime Minister, who, when it was suggested that this might be part of an arrangement so that New Zealand could take some of the people off Nauru and Manus, that he said New Zealand was not going to accept two classes of citizen. And I dare say the United States would be in a similar position as well, and so would any other respectable nation, which makes it very difficult indeed for Australia to find a third country that can accept these people. And as these negotiations continue, it's quite clear the Prime Minister at least thinks that Nauru and Manus are not the end point of this, that these people do have to be moved on, resettled.
Jim, you've just highlighted again why there is no easy course of action here, or no easy solution. Coming back to the core, for me the core issue is we've got to stop this trade. People smugglers, they exploit our compassion, and their business model is people. And they don't care if people drown, they don't give their money back if people drown, if people don't make it to Australia. It is an insidiously cruel endeavour. And unfortunately, we have to show no weakness. And I understand where Prime Minister Key is coming from, but again, he's got to make decisions that are right for New Zealand, and we have to make decisions that are right for Australia. And we do have freer borders between Australia and New Zealand than we do with other nations. And it would be very easy, again, for people smugglers to say, well, you know, we'll get you to Australia, we'll get you to New Zealand, give it a couple of years, and then you can come to Australia, which again is just opening up the doors to people smugglers. There are no easy answers. That's the bottom line.
Indeed. Linda Reynolds, there are lots of other issues and this is going to be an interesting week of Parliament ahead, but I'd better make sure that you can catch your plane and get there so that you'll be part of it. Do appreciate your time. Good to talk to you again.
You too. Thank you very much, Jim.